shoot. I have to move. There, you can see me better now.
Yes, hello there.
Hello. Good morning to you. Well, I guess it's good evening. My bad.
Yes. Well, um, quite. So, uh, I came out of a trip a couple of hours ago. I've explored the same dosage that I did the last time, and it was quite fascinating. So I didn't have the same level of anxiety anymore in this certain layer of dosage. That same delusional part that has a negative self-delusion, that part, that protector came up again. And
Hmm.
then I recognized it. And then immediately that part was like, oh, so we already know each other. So there's no need for all of that shit again. So, and then there was a lot about talking with self-hate, the the internal antagonizer. Yeah, so just speak to this part. You can say
Okay.
self-hating part.
The self-hating part. You're here right now. What do you want for me to know about you?
I'm in a complete shock
About what?
from becoming aware that I am an internal enemy to parts in the system. And I realized that I have adopted, I realized it on a deeper layer, that I've adopted the self-hate from the legacy of my mom, my grandma, and all of that.
Uh-huh. Why did you do that? Why is that important?
I realized that if I punish myself, they will not punish me, or at least
Yeah. Yeah,
punish me less.
makes sense. It sounds like it keeps you out of trouble in some ways.
Well, if I'm very mad at someone and I want to go and beat them, if I approach them and then they start beating themselves, the it's either I'm gonna feel sorry for them or I will think, well, he gets what he deserves, so there's no need for me to give it to him.
So, are you telling me about, are you telling that about others or about Neo? I'm trying to ask, are you trying to
It's
tell
an
me that it's better
internalized
that he
process.
beats himself up?
Exactly. I was the one who did the beating and still have the program in me.
Yeah. And it seemed like it was quite effective. I don't think you would have kept doing it if it wasn't effective. That's kind of what I mean.
Yes, it was effective.
What did you get out of it? What about it worked?
I failed. I don't know if I failed, but an attempt to adhere to what my caregivers at the time, my grandma, my mom, wanted me to be
And what did they want you to be? What was it that you became?
obedient,
Okay.
never express anger,
Okay.
to believe that I'm bad and I deserve to be punished.
Well, I guess in some ways, if there is anger there and anger is bad, I'm not agreeing with any of this, but I'm just going along with the belief here. If anger is bad and you have anger, then you must be bad.
Yes.
So whenever that
It's okay
anger
when they have
came,
anger, but not okay when I have anger.
right, right. Well, I mean that you accepted their rules, it sounds like.
Correct.
In what did that result in? How did that end up going for you and for Neo? It probably worked as a kid. I get that, but do you know Neo as a kid?
Some part of me do, some part of me are enacting the same patterns, so probably not.
Well, what about you? Do you know he's not a kid?
I get an error
Error
replying to this
message.
question. Yeah,
Oh,
like
okay.
kind of like the wires are not tapping in with one another. That makes sense.
Okay. Well, what if you just sat with it then for a minute or two and maybe noted that experience? We don't have to be in a rush.
I don't remember where that sentence from a song is coming from, but it's a metal band, and there is a sentence where the singer says, "I hate myself to stay alive."
Yeah. And it seemed like it was very effective. Made it. You made it through. You are alive. We talked last time about some parts that weren't convinced that that was the right choice at certain times
But what wasn't the right choice?
to stay alive. There were parts that didn't
Okay.
want to stay alive.
Interesting. There is a point to what you say. So something is shifting within me because I've kind of unblended it to a degree from that self-hate. Mhm. And I can tell that it is not mine.
Okay. Sounded like it was your grandma's and your mom's, or at least it influenced by it.
Another thing, also connected in a way, the desire to have children has increased in my system in the past year a lot. And I'm noticing that I have this kind of an awkwardness around kids.
So is it this part that's awkward? around kids, or is this a new part? Is it the part that has self-hatred or another part?
So when I was peaking on the trip, I looked at some videos of
Did you say
babies
did you say packing? I didn't
peaked
hear that.
at the peak of the trip.
Oh, okay.
I looked at some videos of babies, and it was interesting that there were times where disgust came up. And then another part was wondering, what the fuck? Why would I feel disgust seeing a baby? And then what came up is how fragile and weak and dependent it is. This is where the disgust came from.
Yeah. I've met that part of you before that doesn't like playing, doesn't like kids.
That's the killer part. And I wouldn't say that he doesn't like kids.
So this is a different part. This isn't the killer.
I'm not sure.
You could ask.
I'm noticing that there is an overwhelm part that is saying, ah, yesterday I was in something called ecstatic dance, and I did my regular inward sessions. And there was this kind of a breakthrough in understanding something. So there is those part, the child believes that he's a monster. That part is refusing to identify with a positive in the system, which is very clearly present. And I didn't understand why it had such a strong resistance.
Hmm.
Then he said that he's afraid that if he would identify himself as quote unquote good or see the light, then he will be blinded by it
Hmm.
and then have a blind spot, and then he will act like a monster.
Right, right. Sure.
So there is that, and underneath that, there was a belief that some things are unforgivable. And it brought me back in a spiral way where I just started therapy with my psychologist back at the time, where she connected me to my emotions. Then there was a moment where I told her I can't connect to my emotions. And then she said, "Why?" She said, "Why?" And I said, "Because what if I feel angry and I will want to hit someone, like my dad did, hit my mom?" We resolved that. Then came another layer that said, if I'll connect to my emotions enough, and then I'll find myself being attracted to kids, then I'm gonna take my feet to the mall and I'm gonna jump out of a roof. Uh, I had this thought after I left the session with her, and I was ruminating on that before I knew about IFS and all those things. And there was this moment where probably self came in that wasn't conscious of what the fuck that is, and said, well, worst case scenario, it just means we need help. And then
Yeah.
damn, something shifted drastically in the system back then. And that was, let's say, maybe 7 years ago. So that same lesson happened again.
Okay. What was the context you're saying in this trip
That
about
for that
babies?
that for that part, no, it's not to do about the babies, it's something else that I need to connect as well here. So that part that held the belief and still holding that he's a monster, he believed that there are some things that are unforgivable
Mhm.
or unredeemable. And then that same lesson came back again, where I told to that part, it doesn't matter what happens. Of course, there are certain behaviors that do
Yeah.
not align with the values of the system. But at the same time, nobody is perfect. And if such a major shadow comes up, then we'll deal with it like men.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what self does, right? Self is open and accepting and able to receive and work through whatever it is that shows up. Parts, on the other hand, rightfully so, have very strong opinions. They should. That's their job.
Also in the trip, now there's a part in me that says, how transparent can one be? So, so there's this deep sense of worthlessness in the system, which is connected to a sense of powerlessness. And the connection that I made with it is the true sexuality. For example, when talking about penis sizes. So there is the understanding that different bodies match different bodies and so on. And I had this thought for a very, very long time. When I'm having sex with women, there are some levels of pleasure that I'm able to give on a physical level that other men can on the one side. But then on the other side, there are levels of pleasure that other men can give and I can't.
Mhm.
And then this has caused very painful levels of a sense of worthlessness and powerlessness in my system.
So there's a lot of tenderness and vulnerability around this. I just want to acknowledge your willingness to share it and to I guess first I'm going to say to make check in and make sure your system has what it needs. I'm sure it does, but I think it's worth pointing that out.
What do you
And
mean
secondly,
that what we
well, is it still safe? Is it protected? Did it are any parts saying you shared too much? Are they feeling vulnerable?
before the session, I was thinking about it, and the promise to the part was, first of all, the session is for my system, and after ending the session, and then I'm gonna edit the subtitle. If some part feels that something is not safe to put out, then it would be censored.
Okay,
But that is the agreement with my part.
great, great. I'm glad you have that agreement.
Yes.
Uh,
There is
I
there is
have,
that wait, there is that sense of worthlessness. Underneath it, a sense of powerlessness, and underneath it, abandonment, anxiety, and loneliness. And above all that, there was that layer of shame.
I'm curious about something,
Yeah.
and if your system is like, I don't, that's not where we're going, that's fine. But this could be a tangent. How, how and when did it develop this viewpoint, this belief that it should be shamed and feel powerless and worthless for not being able to please women? I guess that's what I'm hearing at the moment.
There is a part that is identified with his abilities when it comes to sexuality. And that part, when I was younger, also used it in order to reduce the possibility of a girl that I enjoy having time with leaving me. So from that part's perspective, the sooner we have sex, the less chance you will want to leave. So there is that on the one side. Then where the shame is coming from is I remember when I was young, and also when my mom met my stepdad, how she had a certain vision of what the ideal man is. In other words, what she's attracted to, which is not me.
Okay.
So because it is not me, or what I thought at the time should attract every woman,
hmm
then the shame can, for example, around my height. That fucked my system very strongly. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Sure. Yeah, it did. Was just curious. In part of what I was interested about in that is it sounds like a lot of today is about mom and grandma beliefs.
Yes.
The first part we were with, and if this is a different one, it could be the same. It sounds like parts of you are carrying beliefs that aren't theirs. They're beliefs that were picked up by
Yes.
other people.
I'm noticing the part wants me to speak for it now.
Sure. So what part are you? Who's here now? 'Cause,
You know, shame is the experience of I don't want to be seen, heard, felt, and I should hide myself, basically.
Sure. Yeah. I was going to say I want to hide is
Yeah,
certainly involved in almost all shame. Yeah.
exactly. So there was a dilemma before the session about when I said how much one can be transparent or exposed or vulnerable. Remember what I said. So there is a knowing in my system that part of being transparent is also undoing shame for me. Because if something is out in the open, then
Yeah. Yeah. It's
there's
exposed to
no
the light.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I've noticed some relief after sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. I hear what you're saying. I'm thankful that part spoke for that.
Okay, so I'm noticing that there are more layers of shame.
Hmm. What are you hearing from them?
And okay, the demon is trying to assess the levels of comfortability. Okay, card. Okay, so now I need to promise my cards that I'm gonna review the session before I upload it. And if you don't want to
Hmm.
upload or censor certain stuff, it will be censored.
Yeah. Or it could just be for you. I mean, that's
Of course.
your option too. Yeah.
There's that on the one side, and then on the other side, I can feel, I can see the part that is carrying shame and
Hmm.
wants to share its story
Right.
to help it unshame or deshame. However, it's that
Yeah. And that's where you come in. That's where the self comes in, and you can lead both of those parts to the best course of action for all of them.
yeah, I can see the demon and the killer giving some confidence, some courage to the part to share. Okay, so growing up, I was a very, very late bloomer. What a thing. I can't believe I'm sharing it. Okay. Right. Okay. So I was a very, very late bloomer. And until the army, I was sure that penis is very, very small. Absolutely sure about it. And so I had a lot of shame. I wouldn't feel comfortable going to the showers, at
Mm.
pools, naked, stuff. Then when I went to the army, we had this week in the field. It was fucking intense. And my system was so exhausted that I didn't give a fuck. I'm just gonna go to the shower. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take all that dirt away from me. And then something shifted for the first time. I was extremely insecure back then, very shy. At the same time, I had a very attractive girlfriend. And the guy in my unit didn't believe me that she's my girlfriend. They thought I was making shit up. And there was that one time where when I went to the shower, and then one of the guys who was kind of the alpha of the pack kind of looked at me and said, "Oh, now I understand why you have this girlfriend." I was like, "What do you mean?" And connection. Then he said something about my dick.
Mhm.
A year and a half afterwards, I had the second girl that I had sex with, and I got positive feedback from her, which gave me another cognitive dissonance. And then an identification with I'm blessed came up in my system. And there was a lot of kind of confidence and pride around that.
Mhm.
Then something changed. And I don't know when. I can recall when it changed. But that level of confidence that I had shifted. I don't remember when it shifted, but it did somewhere around 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
Okay.
So some insecure part came to the surface. And then when I get positive feedback, there's a part that immediately dismisses that. And I've
Okay.
noticed that whenever certain types of triggers come up, my dick would shrink. Talking about very recently where I became aware of it. So I have this child part that is experiencing worthlessness and looks at my body through his filter.
Sure. That makes sense.
And I can see the crazy contrast between that part that holds that sense of worthlessness and then the other parts that are
Yeah.
identified.
I'm curious if he wants to be introduced to your adult self. You could just ask him. He may not know what your body is like as an adult.
Getting a disconnection. Okay, so now I'm going to check how does my system feel after sharing all that.
Okay.
So noticing part celebrating, speaking for that, and going through the shame, but there's still no relief yet, like last time.
No. Well, I would propose checking in with the young part who's holding the shame.
Immediately I heard I cannot identify with anything positive
Okay. And why do you hold that belief? Am I speaking to you right now? Are there parts that are blocking you from it, or is it
because
you? That,
for me to embody my truth would get me punished.
okay. By your mom and your grandmother? Or are there others?
Mainly by them. Having this scenario when I was maybe like 6 or 5, I was playing this game on Nintendo, Super Mario, and then my mom had a part that came in and intentionally sabotaged my fun playing the game, and it would piss me off. And when I would get pissed off, she would laugh. And then my grandma was asking my mom to stop, but also kind of laughing at the same time.
Mhm. So they found it playful and funny when you were upset.
Yes. And my mom has this same dynamic with my dog. It's very interesting. There is a part in her that loves pissing him off. And then when he shows teeth or gets pissed off, that part in her gets whatever need that it has met and backs off at some point.
Okay. And so backing off would, as a kid, I want to relate this. I want to make sure I'm following. Backing off as a kid would then reconnect you with your mom. She would praise you for that.
Let's say she
What
does
what
something
would
that pisses
happen?
me off.
Hmm.
And then let's say I get angry, then she would get angry at me for getting angry
Right. Right.
and punish me
So,
for getting angry.
okay. So if you backed off, though, what I'm curious is, and maybe it wasn't, maybe it was just the end of the negative, but was there a positive payoff? Like, was she more affectionate if you would turn and be kind or warm towards her even when you were upset? I'm curious if there was a positive connection or it was just a negative. I'm just interested. I'm just curious if you're like, I don't really know it, we can move on. But
Ask the question again.
yeah, sure. So she gets pissed off. She does something that pisses you off. You get angry. If you would have found your way through that, I'm not saying it's right. Not
Wait, so
there's no
what comes up? So at that age,
uh-huh,
I've already learned that I cannot get angry at her. So I would immediately go into a sense of powerlessness
uh-huh.
and cry.
And would she then connect to you? Would she then like wrap you up or say it's going to be okay? Or did she ignore it?
Mostly either laugh or ignore it. And I was, if it was very strong, then she might show a small degree of affection just for me to stop crying.
Okay. Yeah. My curiosity around that is if we deny our experience, if we shut down our emotions, not only is there an end to being treated poorly, but if we deny our experience, then you are also getting positively reinforced for that, which is mind bending for a little kid. If I don't have emotions, I'll get a reward, is basically what I'm saying. If I don't express my emotions, I'll be rewarded.
So I remember that one time when I was playing Nintendo, but this is after I already internalized that I can't express anger and I don't see what happened before that. Demon is excited to find a new blind spot.
Yeah. And what about this little boy? What about him? What's happening for him is he discovers this new awareness too, right? It's exciting for the demon. What about for the little boy?
Try to having I got disconnected, so talk to
Okay.
the boy maybe.
Are you here? You were talking about these experiences you had with your mom, or at least they were the images that were coming up. What is it like to have these new awarenesses?
Felt the killer flaring up for a moment, and then remembering how when I met my stepdad for the first time before they became husband and wife. He says how he met me for the first time. I was like 7,
Okay.
and he was completely shocked. I was acting like a robot.
And he told you that at 7?
Mm, no,
Or did he?
no.
No.
Later on.
Okay. Told you later. Got it. Yeah. The 7-year-old wasn't allowed to have emotions, except a very narrow window of them.
Yeah, so the other part that we were talking with before about the shame, I experience now the relief. Hmm. That is fascinating. When the shame was exposed to the light by talking about it, more of a sense of worth just flooded that part.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that there was a contraction that is almost always present in the pitsy muscle. It's almost always contracted, and it got released now.
Great. That sounds a little strange. I'd invite you to honestly, truly, really connect with that right now. I think it's important.
And I can sense there is a lot of energy flowing there now.
It could be, we haven't really discussed it, but it could be where this young boy resides in your system. Maybe that's where his energy is.
Okay, so I'm gonna continue uh unshaming that layer there. Also, fascinating. So there were times where I was a teenager and my mom, she barely ever drinks. And it was this one time where she drank and she gets drunk super easily. Adorable. And then she was talking about with her friend, and I was at the table uh, about my stepdad, praising him in certain ways that then made me compare to him, and immediately that sense of worthlessness in me came up.
Hmm.
And when I share this, immediately the sense of relief is coming up. There's no delay now.
Do do does this young part, Neo, know about legacy unburdenings? Does this part know it can give back to your mom what doesn't belong to it?
Yeah, it will happen. You just need to uncover some layers before
Okay. I just want to make sure it knows that's available to it.
Wow, that feels good. Okay, so now there is a part scanning. Okay, where else do I have shame? There's another one.
Another part or another layer.
Another pattern of shame.
Okay. Is that something you want to look into today? Or do you want to stay with this one? Is there more to share about what we've been discussing so far?
There is also a part that is pretty obsessed about uh, hygiene in my mouth. Because when I was having in high school, I had a tooth that I didn't know that I don't brush. And so it would give off a smelly odor. And I became conscious of it only at age, somewhere in the very early 20s.
Are you connecting with that part? I hope that you are. I just leaned into that high school boy who was self-conscious about his
That part is pissed
hygiene.
because, when I'm around people that have bad breath, especially women, there is a recoil in me that is happening.
Mm, okay.
Then that part is pissed that nobody told him that until this one guy in high school. Mm.
And how did that part take it when he told him? Did it piss him off or was he thankful?
It didn't piss him off at all. He was shocked and felt shame, but nothing negative towards the guy. He was appreciated towards the guy for being honest.
Yeah.
Interesting. I shared what I shared, and then I didn't feel the relief. And then after you asked the question, then the part shared that he was pissed off, then the relief came again.
What does that mean to you? I would check in with your system about that.
It means to me that if I'm sharing something that has shame attached to it, if I'm not experiencing a relief, then there is a part that hasn't been fully seen or witnessed.
I'm curious if it thinks this part that's getting the relief Does it think it needs that witnessing with someone else? Or because you said this part about like me asking the question, is it waiting to be seen by someone else? For some parts, that is important.
For some parts, they need to be witnessed by others, and for some parts, the fact that it has
Yeah, and
come
what
to
about
the
this one?
conscious.
I'm really gonna, yeah, invite you to check in with him.
For him, it matters that I've seen that first, thanks to your question, but he was pissed off. And then the fact that it is now out in the open, again, brings this kind of a relief. Good, so now there's nothing to hide.
Uh, I'm glad. I'm glad he gets this opportunity to no longer hide, to be seen, to be heard. I'm curious if there's anything else he wants for you or me to see, hear, or understand about him.
No, there is another pattern of shame. When I was about sick and my mom met the an ex-boyfriend of hers, the same guy that ended up molesting me, there was this one day where I heard noises from the room. So I went to peep through the keyhole. And what I saw is them in doggy style. At that age, I didn't know what it was, of course. But I remember that when I saw it, two things mainly came up in me. The first was she is touching him and doesn't touch me, especially not in this way. So that means that she loved him, but doesn't love me. And there was a kind of a arousal at the same time. Then this guy, as part of his manipulation, would have told me things like, "Well, do you see how mom touches me and doesn't touch you? To me, the child." And I'm saying yes. And then he says, "Well, if you do what I say, I can teach you how to make mom love you as well." And that has developed an Oedipus complex in my system towards my mom.
Sure.
And when I just started to go to therapy, it took me a couple of months to be able to share that with her because the levels of shame that I've experienced
Yeah.
were insane.
Well, just so you know, Neo, to be able to share that in a couple of months is remarkable. I mean, there are people that hold their shame for years and years and years. There's a part of you that's saying it took me 3 months. It's remarkable.
In perspective. Thank you. And eventually, there was this fucking battle in my system. Eventually, I shared it with her, and the way she responded was very positive. But then I also shared it with my best friend at the time. That was the second person I've shared that with, and he also responded very well. And after that, I was able to share it. I also talked with my mom about it, and I was able to share it
Uh-huh.
pretty freely. And because of those experiences, my wires got crossed in a very strong way when it comes to sexuality and love.
What did you end up believing? What did you hold? You said your wires got crossed.
Well, let's say with my previous ex, when I met her, I told her immediately what she can expect from me, the boyfriend, and blah, 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 blah. Long story short, we had this one time when went to the beach together, and then we saw some girl, she approached her, blah, blah, blah. We left the dynamic. And then when I have some girl that I'm attached to, if she wants to add other women to our dynamic, to the child in me, it's a huge testament of being loved. So for example, with that experience, when me and my ex, we talked with that girl and then we left, and I sat with her, I had a child coming up that was maybe 4 years ago, or three, four. There was a child that looked at her and had a single tear running down his face out of the fact that he perceived that as a loving gesture from my ex.
Hmm.
So the sexuality and love are very intertwined in my system,
Right, right.
which now that I express it, it makes sense to me why I never had it where I'm having sex with a girl and then I would want her to leave after I come or have an orgasm. Never happened to me, besides once.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hear you.
Now there is a system update about what all just happened in our session.
Okay. I think those are important things. Take your time with that.
And there is a part that feels so relieved, bringing
You
those.
said there.
There is a part that is very relieved
Okay.
from thanks to bringing all of those things to the light. And the Lucifer part became very present.
Is there anything he wants to share with you or with me? He's welcome.
That part is quite the trickster.
Lucifer, I mean.
Yes, even very, very lighthearted.
Okay.
And when that part is present, crazy shit happens in a very positive way.
Okay.
Because that part or channel doesn't operate around fear at all.
Okay. Would you ask him what he's here to do? What he's here for now?
He's saying that because those layers of shame got unburdened to a degree, then it allows him to be more present.
Okay. More room for playfulness.
And
That
true,
makes sense. What would he like to play around with right now? Excuse me.
nothing at the moment.
Okay. Just wanted you to know that he's here. Yeah, I'd acknowledge him. Let him know you know he's here and that he's welcome.
For example, one of the crazy shit that happens when this part is present
Uh-huh.
was doing my walk at the beach, and then I saw a girl sitting on a rock. When that Lucifer part comes up, there is complete presence to the moment, and there is no inner chatter happening, no doubts, no what should I say or should I do. It's complete presence, And then when I'm embodying that channel or part, for example, I need, in order for that channel or part to be present, a logical part needs to unblend
Okay.
and to not try and find sense in whatever I'm saying at the moment. So, for example, I see this girl on a rock, then I approach her and I'm looking in her eyes and I'm telling her, uh, "Thank you for being such a pleasant human being. I know it can be really hard sometimes." She just looks at me and starts crying. And then I keep on sharing some stuff that spontaneously come up.
Uh-huh.
And she doesn't even say a single word out of her mouth. I'm just sharing while she looks me in the eyes. And the more I'm sharing, the more emotional she gets. Then I get this experience of when I'm embodying this part, there is nothing that I need from the other person. There's no need for a particular response or a validation or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So I was just saying things to her for about a minute or a minute and a half. And then I got this knowing that's enough for now. Then I thanked her for being alive and I left.
Uh-huh.
And there was another thing, like similar, a week and a half ago, when I'm seeing this gorgeous blonde sitting and I approach her initially from the demon that was very excited.
Okay.
And then when I came close to her, boom, Lucifer pot came up. She was sitting and I came in front of her, kneeling down, and there was this complete presence where I didn't even say a word out of my mouth. I was just looking her in the eyes. She was looking
Hmm.
me in the eyes, not saying a single word for about 2 minutes.
Connection.
And then I reach out my hand to her, but she doesn't reach out to my hand.
Okay.
And then I sense on the background some fear that has come up. Maybe you're being too much for her. Maybe she's feeling awkward, all kind of things. And while that was present, the Lucifer part was telling the other parts, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And after a minute of me just with my hand out like this, and another fear was also saying, other people look at me now, might think I'm a weirdo. Fear, fear, fear. And the Lucifer part says, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Then after like a minute, she put her hand in mine and started to cry. And then we hugged.
Hmm.
And then she cried even more. And then the daddy part in me came up. And for about the first 15 minutes of our interaction, not a single word came out of my mouth or her
Yeah.
mouth. And that Lucifer part is in complete state of freedom,
Hmm.
and as it seems, has no agenda.
So what is it he he's looking for? What is his desire? It
Spreading
might
light.
just be connection. Yeah.
He just cares about spreading light.
What differentiates him? And this may be a question that is not helpful, but I'm curious what separates him from self. Why isn't that self? If he's spreading light, he has no agenda.
Yeah, he's
He certainly has a lot of access to it, if for sure.
exactly.
Certainly.
As I experience it, it is self-materialized in a human part, which is, I don't know how
Yeah.
much human it is.
Parts have more and less access to self for sure. It sounds like this one has a lot if he isn't self.
He has shit. Yeah, well, there's a part that says it's either a channel or a part of me. I don't know. But whatever it is, it has crazy levels of self. And I was talking about it with a friend of mine that one of my aims is to be able for that to be my default state.
Yeah. Yeah. To access self energy.
So I wouldn't say that Lucifer part or channel is, let's say, pure self, because it has this kind of humanization to it. But the closest that I've seen to it, to
Yeah.
self.
Are you with him now?
No, I'm with the part that says that is grateful for Mr. Hoffman, because that
Is
thing
that
is,
a teacher?
it's the guy who invented LSD.
Ellis. Oh, okay.
And now the demon is asking again that child where, well, what if you identify yourself with light?
Hmm. What happens? What happens? I'm just going to invite you to notice what happens when you identify with light. Just invite that inside, like, to hear, to listen to parts. What happens to us when we identify with light?
So ask the child how is he receiving that.
I'm gonna push this. I'm gonna really push you to ask because I want you to ask lots of parts. And you can start with the child. The reason I'm pushing this is because I really want for you to hear from them.
Yeah, I get it. At the same time, it's as if, okay, so there is a layer of disconnection there.
Okay, so notice that. I would turn your attention to the disconnection. And why is it not open to this exploration of light?
I'm seeing this meme of this guy, John Travolta,
Okay,
going like this.
okay.
As if I'm in this certain dimension, and then there is that child that is in a lower dimension, and then there is this kind of let's say, tube between us,
Okay.
and that tube is this, let's say, a part that is bridging the gaps and um, allowing certain level of access for that part in the lower dimension to me in the higher dimension, because if it would be too much, the cognitive dissonance would be just too strong for that child part.
So says a part.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's possible that if Neo connected with him, it may not be overwhelming. And or there would be ways that Neo's self could support the overwhelm.
That part is
This,
saying, I understand what you're saying, and it's good that you're persistent. At the same time, this is too much for now.
okay.
Interesting.
Well, we're nearly to the end anyways, and I think this is a worthy discussion to continue because as I see it, and I think some of your parts might not love what I'm going to say next, but it's also true. Your parts don't trust you, Neo. And the reason I'm saying this is often I invite you to connect with your system and they say, no, 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 you do it. And I'm perplexed by that. I am perplexed by that because there's so much stuff energy in the system. And even the last session, your system knew exactly what to do and then told me to do it. It was intriguing again. So there's a part that I hold can have a different opinion. There's a part that doesn't trust you. But it's interesting because your system already knows what to do. It's like a paradox. That's fine.
So
You
yeah,
know, I
yeah,
mean,
I love
lots
your
of
part.
people have
I,
paradoxes.
yeah, I love
You
it.
know,
So what kind of explanation does your system try to give to that paradoxical reality that it is witnessing in my
What
system.
what explanation, right? And I mean, if I lead with a part, right? So
No, of
like
course,
you're
like
asking
theorizing. Yeah,
what the part theorizes
yeah,
is that your system is so oriented around parts that they don't trust self. Now your parts have tremendous access to self energy, so they're doing all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, like I'm just gonna say, just like what I said, I don't know why they don't trust self. I'm as perplexed as you are.
yeah. It makes all sense to me. The proplexion, if that's a word.
It
Um,
is a word.
so my explanation to this is the probably the demon explaining now. In the certain layer that I am visiting the system, which is already active for the past, on a more macro level, in the past, let's say 3 years, that layer is very, very dense. And there are the parts that identify very much with the darkness or being a monster. So for these parts to be exposed directly to self is uh, too much for them. In a way, it's as if they are suddenly seeing an alien. There's too much of a
Yeah.
vibrational discrepancy between them.
So my follow-up to that is if it doesn't happen at some point or somewhere, and I'm not saying it won't, but if the role that you continue to perform for Neo is to, well, it's too much, they'll perceive it as a monster, they can't handle it, then it will be true.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is, for example, in our last session, do you remember there was this moment towards the ending of the session where you told to a part to like take a step back and then you continued and then I stopped you and said, wait, something happened here in the system.
Hmm.
So it's
Fair, I do get that, but what might happen, you don't know. What might happen if you weren't always evaluating and monitoring? You're speaking from fear. And that's fine. That's your role. That's your job. But what if you took a step back and discovered what could happen? Now, I understand that your role is a valuable one, but you're still a part. And your role is limiting access to the entire system to self energy. And you're welcome to have that fear. I'm not taking it away from you, but I also would not be doing my job if I didn't speak truthfully.
and I value truth very much and I'm very thankful
Yeah.
for that.
And that's give and take. That's a part of the process. I get that. I'm not, please don't hear this as saying you have to get out of the way because you're interfering, um, which in some ways is part of the truth, but you'll do that when you're ready. And there are really valid and good reasons why you're here. And yeah, you are helpful. I'm not about to dismiss how things work potentially more smoothly, but it's also preventing, as I just said, but I'll say it's also preventing access to the entire system to self energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, I'm happy to see you going with what you perceive is the best to say, even though I might take it negatively,
Okay.
right?
All right. I hear
Yeah.
you. So at points I may say like, hey, let's try this here. Why don't you give space and we'll see what happens.
You just go with what you think is best, and let's see what comes up. See,
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't experience that I'm attached to mostly being in charge. Actually, I wish it wasn't the case.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, we'll proceed with that um gently because that's how my system operates, right? So because I know sometimes you're like, well, just do it. Well, sometimes the system, um, your system as well as my system, both need to do those things,
Sure.
in a way that's gentle for everyone.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So we're gonna have to pause here, but I appreciate you letting me share that.
Of course.
Yeah. All right, Neo. We'll see you next week.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Right. Yep.
Bye.
Bye bye.